Hi, everyone. I'd like to talk a little bit about mindfulness and its role in building resiliency. This is an area where I've found a lot of personal growth, and I'll talk a little bit about that. But we're going to start first with the definition of resiliency. And again, bear with me. I'm going to share my screen. So we're going to talk about building resiliency through mindfulness. So what exactly is resiliency? So the definition I like best is it's the ability to withstand or bounce back from life's hardships and adverse events. We don't get to choose that only good things are going to happen to us in life. We're going to all face loss. We're going to face disappointment, the pain of losing people, physical pain as we age and our bodies start to deteriorate. And resiliency is that capacity to sort of almost surf these ups and downs of life. And we all have resiliency. It's not that, and some people may be more resilient, but we do all have some innate resiliency. So why is resiliency important? It's pretty apparent that if you're able to stay stable, I love the description as if you could be an oak tree that's being tossed side to side by the very strong winds. And yet, even though it's tossed, it eventually comes back to being upright again. And that's kind of like how we'd love to be able to get through life. And when you have true resiliency, it's one of the core abilities that fosters well-being. If you're able to bounce back when things get hard and still find joy, even in the midst, joy or peace, or just the ability to manage when things are not going well, you can see how this plays into a sense of well-being. And resiliency is a capacity that we already have, yes, and it can be cultivated and grown. And one of the ways to do this is through mindfulness. Hopefully you've watched some of the videos on mindfulness and meditation. So one of the most fundamental ways that mindfulness can help is, again, we don't get to choose the pain or the suffering or the hardships that may come into our life, the challenges and our vulnerabilities. But we do have some control over how we view these hardships and challenges and how we manage them. And that's one of the ways that mindfulness can help you transform the attitude that you bring to these challenges. I can't go in too deeply into that, but I'm going to share some of my challenges and how mindfulness helped. I do teach this in an 8-week program, so you can imagine in a 10-minute or 15-minute video, it would be really hard to go too deeply into it. It increases your mental resources. And by this, I mean the ability to see that, to remember actually that even hardships don't stay the same forever. They're not permanent. Just as joys will come and go, hardships will also come and go, even if there's some residual hardship. Another way it increases your mental resource is you start becoming aware of that inner critic or that inner voice that's telling you you're not trying hard enough, you're not, that you're a loser, that, it kind of berates us. It's trying to encourage us. That's usually the way this inner voice develops. It's a way to encourage ourselves. And unfortunately, if you live or have grown up in an environment where you were sort of, rather than encouraged, you were pushed towards being a certain way, this inner voice might be more of an inner critic a lot of the time. And we also, with mindfulness, I always teach certain practices, such as self-compassion, compassion, loving kindness, joy, equanimity. And knowing that we have these available to us also helps to increase the mental resources. And I actually don't know why I use just the mental resources, because it's also the heart resources. And by cultivating mindfulness and these other practices that I just mentioned, you're actually changing the brain. Neuroplasticity is the ability of the brain to create new neural pathways. And neural pathways is what we often fall back on when we're stressed. We'll follow the same habit pattern, but we can create new neural pathways and new habit patterns. And we do this in meditation and in practice in life. So how mindfulness has helped me personally in terms of building my ability to be resilient. I've noticed that when I do have a setback or something happens, I'm able to stay more balanced or to bounce back much quicker than I would have otherwise. Because I can remind myself that, you know what, this too comes to many people. It's not personal to me that I've had this setback. Other people face the same setback. They get through it. Or maybe that I faced something similar to this in the past and I was able to get through it. So it's that ability to stay mindful and remember, because that is also one of the definitions of mindfulness, is the ability to remember that you have resources. And another way it's helped me is like everybody else, I have some pretty bad habits. Like I notice that when I'm feeling tired, not so much when I'm anxious or stressed out, when I'm tired, I have a craving for sugar. And it's great, I'll take a cookie or whatever, and then I'll have a crash and then I'll need another cookie. So I've become aware of this habit pattern. And now rather than just reaching for a cookie, I might go for a walk. Or, at least stand at the window and look outdoors and see the sunlight. And then that might be able to make me feel a little less tired. I'm far more responsive when I'm with people and less reactive. And that just creates a better and better relationship with my children, with my friends and my family. And that in turn builds resiliency. And obviously this carries into the fact that when I'm with people, I try to pay more attention so that I can see what's happening for them. I'm present to what's happening inside of myself. I'm more able to express that and be more vulnerable with people that I trust. I manage my stress levels better. I still get stress. It's not about getting rid of stress, not at all. It's my attitude towards my stress levels are better. For example, today I'm actually feeling quite a bit of stress. One of the reasons being that creating this video. And yet, rather than just sort of spiraling into, oh my God, this is terrible, which actually increases stress, I'm like, oh, okay, today I'm going to have to deal with some stress. Okay, that's fine. I'm going to have the stress and I'm still going to carry on. That's a very different attitude than I had before. And with mindfulness and being able to pay attention to what's happening in my body when I do feel peaceful and joyful, I can then kind of backtrack and see what is it that's contributing to these feelings of peace and joy, and how do I recreate them more and more in my life, and also noticing what causes me stress. And is there ways to decrease some of those situations that cause me stress? And for sure, my inner critic has gotten quieter. It's still there, still chattering away, but I catch it. And I know that I don't necessarily have to believe everything it tells me. So these are some of my favorite quotes that I do use in my teaching, which is, the wandering mind is an unhappy mind. Usually when our minds are wandering, we're wandering into the past. So we might be ruminating, which can cause stress and depression, or the mind wanders into the future. And now all of a sudden you're stressed and anxious and worried about what might happen. And this quotation actually comes from an actual research study that they did. And they found that people were able to stay present, even if their circumstances in the present are not great. by cutting out this constant, by having a tool whereby you can catch yourself ruminating or stressing about the future and coming back to the present moment, there's a certain amount of peace and ability to be with it. And this one, all thoughts are real, but not necessarily true. That inner voice that tells us, I have this inner voice that tells me that I'm really, really shy and I'm an introvert. And yet when I talk to my friends, they're like, no, that's not true. You're quite confident. You seem quite expressive. And I was just like, wow, I've been carrying this thought around that I'm a shy and introverted person. And yet maybe that's not necessarily true. I have good, self-compassion, which is taught with mindfulness. It's the ability to self-soothe, because we can't always find people to soothe us. So if we're able to calm that inner voice, to be able to say, oh yeah, other people go through this. This is not personal to me. I know I have some tools. That's the ability to self-soothe. And I teach an entire course on that. And then also the practice of loving kindness, also called metta, which you may have heard of, which is the ability to start beginning to feel goodwill towards all, especially towards ourselves, which also helps with that inner voice. And it also makes us feel connected, because sometimes in our role as a family member of someone who has some challenges in being with the world, we can start beginning to feel a little bit isolated. But feeling goodwill towards everybody and all living beings, it makes us feel connected to the world, to nature, to our communities, to our families, and it opens the heart. So thank you for listening to this talk. I hope you learned something and that I might see you on a future course or during a talk. So have a great day. Talk to you soon.